The search for Malaysian Air 370 may come to an end, and scores of protesters are arrested in Hong Kong. Plus, North Korea fires more missiles into the sea, and the Thai junta deals with criticism over the new charter. For Tuesday, March 3, 2015, this is the Asia Brief. For the families of those on Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, March 8th is a day that they will not forget. The day that they lost their loved ones, their fate still unknown. Nearly a year has passed, with still no definitive sign of where the aircraft's final resting place is. The 239 passengers and crew on board remain part of perhaps the biggest aviation mystery of the modern era. Somehow, the plane diverted from its intended course after leaving Kuala Lumpur and wound up in the southern Indian Ocean, rather than closer to its intended destination, Beijing. Search operators say that 60,000 square kilometers of seabed will have been searched by the end of May, and the decision of what to do next then comes. If nothing is found, Asian Deputy Prime Minister Warren Truss says a call must be made on continuing the search in some 1.1 million square kilometers of sea bottom. For many of the families on board, they won't have closure unless they have certain knowledge that the aircraft has been located and perhaps their loved ones' remains have been recovered, Truss said. He also made a very good point that the search cannot go on indefinitely, although they want to do everything in their power to locate the aircraft. Thus far, the search for MH370 has been the most expensive in aviation history. Australia and Malaysia have paid out some $40 million. Truss says that continuing the search further would necessitate financial assistance from other nations or groups. Martin Dolan, Chief Commissioner of the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, remains confident that the plane would be found in the primary search corridor, but if it wasn't, the cost would be prohibitive moving forward. Tensions flared in Hong Kong over the weekend, bringing about 400 demonstrators into the street. They weren't calling for democracy, but were rallying against Chinese mainlanders called parallel traders, who buy goods in Hong Kong and then return to the mainland to sell them for profit. The protesters called out, "Cancel the multiple entry permit," and topple the Communist Party. The demonstrators blocked the main road in Yuen Long with garbage bins, forcing traffic to come to a standstill. Police then intervened, ultimately using pepper spray to disperse the crowd. One report surfaced of a woman bleeding from her nose as the police dragged her away. King Lee, a 23-year-old Yuen Long resident, said, "We can't walk because of all the goods piled up like mountains on the streets. We should not endure this silently." The protest is the latest in a series pitting Hong Kongers against mainlanders. In this scuffle, 36 were arrested. The youngest was 13, the oldest 74, demonstrating that the issue transcends generations. But those weren't the only arrests made in Hong Kong. On Monday, several pro-democracy lawmakers were also arrested for their involvement in the protests that paralyzed the city last year. Albert Ho and Helena Wong, both from the Democratic Party, were arrested and released as police continued to pursue principal instigators of the Umbrella Revolution. While the pair was released, as all others who have been arrested before, Wong said the possibility of future charges remain, and he feels that this is a form of political persecution against those fighting for true democracy. Police made no comment, but firmly reserved the right to prosecute anyone involved in what Hong Kong's leadership deemed illegal protests. March 2nd marked the start of the latest joint U.S.-South Korea military drills. As per usual, the dictatorial regime in Pyongyang called the maneuvers a dress rehearsal for a northward invasion and launched missiles in an attempt to demonstrate their military power. South Korea's Yonhap News says that 2 short-range missiles were fired into the sea off of North Korea's eastern coast near Nampo, and then splashed down after flying 490 kilometers. South Korea says its military remains vigilant against any additional launches as it maintains the readiness posture. The tit-for-tat response was expected and not out of the ordinary. While North Korea's actions do bear watching, the net result is zero change in tension on the peninsula. Thailand's general public is seeking more involvement in the drafting of its new governing charter. The critics come from both sides of the political aisle, and they're calling for a public debate and referendum on the proposed plan. Some of the sticking points they're pointing out are the move to make Thailand's 200-member upper house of the Senate unelected and making the Prime Minister an unelected position, bringing about another allegation that the charter drafting process is more about eliminating the Shinawat clan from government, as they've won every election since 2001. The entire charter drafting committee was handpicked by the Junta, which ousted Yingluck Shinawat last year. Born Sak Uwano, a law academic who heads the committee, said the committee is listening to the public and not to worry. He plans to introduce the charter draft at the end of this month or early April. Be sure to keep up with more news from the region by following Asian News Weekly on Facebook or Twitter. You can also send an email to the show with your comments, your questions, and your feedback. Just drop a line to podcast@asiannewsweekly.net. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends and subscribe to this and other podcasts on our website, asiannewsweekly.net. You can also do that in your favorite podcast application like iTunes or Stitcher. Subscribing is free, and when you do, the next episode is delivered automatically to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. For the Asia Brief, I'm Steve Miller.